So I recently watched and provided a review for this German movie from last year. I did this in my Substack. Make sure to subscribe to my Substack. You can subscribe for free and get notified every time I drop an article. A good number of them are public. And if you want to help your financially struggling boy out, you can also sign up for the price of a cappuccino to get access to all of the articles. I think it's like $5 a month. You can subscribe for the year for like $30. And if you're really loaded and want to help me, ensure that I have food for my baby and my wife and the capacity to survive and pay the bills, there's this option called founding member that Substack creates so that people can donate, I think, $240 for the year. But anyways, I did a review of Paradise, this dystopian anti-capitalist gem that was made out of Germany. It's basically this guy. He's the protagonist. His name is Max. He works for a company called Aeon, and what Aeon does is that it sucks life years out of usually poor people. It pays them, and then it gives those years to rich people. So that's the basic premise. It has a technology where they stick a little thing into your arm, and they connect you to the rich person that will get the years, and they can take 15 years away, and within a couple of days you look 15 years older. Your body has deteriorated by 15 years, and the person that you gave the 15 years to, they look 15 years younger. So I'm not going to give any major spoilers of the movie here, and I don't do that in the article. I try to stay within the confines of the essential ideological messages and social critiques that it provides of capitalism, and drawing the homologies between the sci-fi society of Paradise and the one that we live in now. But there's quite a few of this. First of all, Aeon refers, if you look it up etymologically, to the Greek. It means lifespan of around 100 years, and then it comes to mean something akin to like a vital force or just life being. So the company Aeon is telling, because that's literally what they're taking away from working people to give to rich people. They're taking away their life. It's something that's perfectly legal, as Max's working class father-in-law notes a couple times in the movie. Interestingly enough, the movie mentions that Socialist China is the leading international force behind trying to ban this life year transfer. One of the things that the company does is pitch this as an opportunity, as the bourgeoisie does with basically everything. So they describe it as winning the lottery, a winning of the lottery. And the advertisement that they put out, it says phrases like, choose your dreams. When you give time, life recompenses you. Your time, your opportunity, your choice. They tell us, the president tells us as she's speaking in a panel, when Max gets given Employee of the Year, Aeonian of the Year, after taking 276 years away from poor people to give it to the rich, the company owner, President Sophie, she says that, how great would it be if we could have the capacity to have the greatest poets of humanity, composers, scientists, live decades longer. Now with these services, they'd be able to do that. And here's where I start my sort of critique, or my drawing out of, what's implicit in the movie. And, we have to remember this famous quote from Stephen Jay Gould: I am somehow less interested in the weight and convolutions of Einstein's brain than in the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops. And it's the same thing with the Paradise universe. How many poor people never had the condition to really actualize the potential that they had as intellectuals and serve humanity, perhaps in ways that are more beneficial than the rich scientists and the rich artists, but who are then forced to give their life years to these wealthy artists, donors, usually just big capitalists who have the ability to buy that. And as the father-in-law of Max, the protagonist, says, a working class person can work their whole damn life and they'll never be able to make enough money in order to have one of those procedures for themselves. And this is not disconnected from the fact that, as the working class father says, the rich in that society are living longer while the poor are dying sooner. Now, the thing that really scares us when we see these sorts of movies is that we recognize the societies we live in them, and we understand that if our society had the technology that this movie is centered around, it would literally act and legitimize its practices in the exact same way. But we don't even have to get there. Like, we can just like see the homologies, the structural similarities between the paradise universe and the societies that we live in already. Let me give you some examples. It has been scientifically established that the wealthier live longer than the poor. In study after study, they've shown how it is that twins, so, as similar as you can possibly get between two people, the twin that has the most money lives significantly longer than the one that has less money. This is evident because when you have money, you have access to better food. You can pay for subscriptions to better gyms so that you're more motivated to work out and keep up a healthy lifestyle. You have the capacity to have better medical treatment. And when you have a mixture of all of that, there's not only the direct benefits that those things bring, but there's also the absence of stress and trauma that comes when you don't have any of those things secured. And we've talked about it here a few times. The book, The Myth of Normal, from Daniel and Gabor Mate, that describes how it is that things like stress lead to diseases like cancer and other horrendous diseases that we have often just thought of as just, a luck of the draw disease. No, it's rooted in practices that are situated in the economic system that we have in the society that it produces. But if we look at this MIT study, it says that in the US, the richest 1% of men live for basically 15 years longer than the average poorest 1% of men, while amongst women, the difference is of 10 years. So what does this mean? That the ultra rich live on average 15 years longer than the poorest people in America. And when it comes to women, it's 10 years. So, what is this if not a clear example of the life of the poor being sucked out of them by the capitalist elite, so that not only they accumulate as much capital as fucking humanly and physically possible, but so that in the process, they're able to live longer. They're able to have the material means to, live longer than 10, 15 years longer than the poorest of the poor, who produce the surplus that allows the rich to live longer. So yes, we don't have that little fucking paradise technology, but it's still, in terms of the outcome, it's extremely similar. We do live in a system where capital functions, as Marx mentioned, in a vampire-like way, sucking the life out of working people, and the people that suck that life out suck life into themselves. It's the capitalist vampires that suck life into themselves. So, this inequality of life expectancy that is treated as such a crisis by these institutions of human rights or poverty studies, it's merely a reflection of the relations of production and the exploitation at the root of capital accumulation. It's a reflection of something else, of something deeper, that is the essence of the capitalist system. And each of these facts are dialectically interconnected. It is not the case that the rich get richer and it's disconnected from the poor getting poor. The rich get richer and live longer because the poor are poorer and live less. They're destroying their bodies so that the rich can accumulate as much capital as possible. So there's other ways in which we waste our time. Studies have shown that in order to produce what we produce now, which in many ways is a surplus, it's just, so much gets wasted instead of, actually being distributed to people accurately. And that inequality of distribution is rooted in that the structures, the relations of production. But there's studies that show that we really only have to work around 3 hours a day, 15 hours a week. This is the prediction that John Maynard Keynes had made at the beginning of the 20th century, and that Marx's son-in-law, Paul Lafargue, had made decades before that. It has now become materially possible. The only reason why you have to slavishly work in an alienating job for 9 to 10 to 11 hours sometimes, a day for 5, 6, 7 days a week, is not because we don't have enough for you to be in leisure the vast majority of your time and only work 3 hours. It's because of the social relations. It's because of the capitalist system and the structure and the class relations that are operative in producing the things for society. It could be another way if we restructured those relations and had, a system whose purpose is not to accumulate capital in the hands of a small few, but to meet the needs of human beings and create such abundance that we can work literally as little as possible. Create the sort of abundance that allows for, as Martin Hoagland calls it, as much socially available free time as possible. Reduce the socially necessary labor time as much as possible. So, on average, working people are working 90,000 hours throughout their life. This ends up being somewhere around like 15 years of our lives dedicated to work. And that doesn't account for how work affects us when we leave our job, how it drains us of energy so that we get home and all we want to do is just sit down, watch some football, and eat some cheese balls or something and drink a beer. Those are effects of the soul that you see after you clock out of work, but that are still the effects of that, tiring, alienating, repetitive, mechanical work that you're forced to do literally in order to fucking survive. So what is this if not us dedicating our life to making the rich not only richer, but making them have the material means to live longer than us while we destroy our own lives doing the work that accumulates capital for them. So again, these sci-fi movies, they're scary and dystopian, but one of the central pieces of dystopia is the imaginary component of it. We don't have to do a lot of imagining. It's already so rooted in the realities of the system that we have, the society of moribund capitalist imperialism in the 2020s. It's right in front of us. We know that if they ever developed the technology that Paradise is centered around, they would use it in the exact same fucking ways. So, another telling side of it is how they defend it. They always present it as a choice or something that we consent to. This is the same thing as the apologists for wage slavery. Supposedly, we have a choice to work, and that is, the contract, the labor contract is something two equal parts come together, there's consent, and therefore there can't be exploitation if there's consent, and even if there is, it doesn't matter. But what's that consent rooted in? If you were born into a working class family, what the fuck else can you do in order to survive, pay the bills, obtain the necessaries of life? What else can you do but work a job, a wage job, where you're necessarily going to be exploited for the vast majority of that time? There's literally no other option but death. How the fuck is that a choice? How am I consenting to something if the alternative either do it or die? There's no choice there. At best, what I have the choice is to decide who exploits me. What slave master am I going to pick? But that's really no choice at all. And that's very similar to the Aeon movie. What choice do the people that are forced to sell their life years in order to have at least a meagerly decent living standard for some years, what choice is that? That's no choice at all. That is honestly no choice at all. The only way to overcome this is through struggle. That's the only way to create a choice for yourself, to commit yourself to fighting for your class and at the same time fighting for humanity. So another important thing is the language that they use. They describe it as winning the lottery. This is a similar form of what I call linguistic whitewashing. It's the same thing as when our empire calls civilian deaths collateral damage. We hear collateral damage. That's a technical term. Say it for what it is. It's fucking innocent civilians dying. Children and women and the elderly dying. That's what collateral damage is. Or when we call the fucking Syrian terrorists, the terrorists in Syria, when we call them moderate rebels, in order to legitimize their struggle against Assad, the political enemy that we had at the moment. No, they're fucking terrorists. They're fucking terrorists. It's terrorists when it's an inconvenience to empire. When it can be used by empire, it's moderate rebels. It's murder when it could be exploited by empire. It's collateral damage when it's done by empire. In relationship to work, the same thing is operative. In the gigafied economy of our day, they use the word flexibility for everything. Come work in fucking Uber, you have flexibility. Come work at this, you have flexibility. What does flexibility mean if not the capacity for the capitalist, like in sex, to screw you in more efficient and easier ways? Flexibility is just insecurity. Flexibility is just precarity. It's just the capitalist removing himself of any responsibility that he has towards you. Responsibilities that were won by centuries of struggles of working people that are now removed on the basis of calling you not an employee, calling you a fucking independent contractor. Again, another very lofty term. I'm an independent contractor, not a wage slave. And it's happening in a whole different host of industries. It's not just, you know, like Uber and Lyft and shit. It's happening with rail workers. It's happening in a variety of different industries where working class people are beginning to be classified as independent contractors so that this flexibility can take root, which just means that the capitalist can exploit you easier, dispatch you whenever they deem you to be unprofitable, and you're done. Any benefits that you can get as a working class person, results of the struggles that your class has waged for you, they're all removed. So the same thing, they describe this process as a lottery. Well, that's a similar linguistic whitewashing. And then the fact that this company, everything it's doing, which is completely unethical, is legal. Why is it legal? Well, because legality, the judicature in any society, is a reflection of the economically dominant class. Because there's no such thing as the state in general. The state is always a particular state. The state of a particular class that uses that state as an instrument to reproduce the current situation where that class is in a position of dominance. That's how it occurred in the slave democracies of the ancient world in Greece and Rome. That's how it occurred in the feudal societies, in the aristocratic societies. That's how it occurs in the current capitalist societies. It's a capitalist state, capitalist judicature. The laws are always going to be grounded in what benefits those who own private property, the capitalist class, and now more and more the big monopoly capitalist class. That's why you can have, completely unethical things, such as the fact that they charge for cancer drugs like Imbruvica $16,000 a month. A drug it takes a very small fraction of that to produce, and that's literally a life-saving drug. They charge a price that only the ultra-rich can afford. How unethical is that? How irrational is that? Especially when these drugs are often developed through public funding, while privatizing the gains and leaving the vast majority of people to just fucking die. Like the 45,000 that die a year because they don't have health insurance. Any sane society would completely destroy this. But our institutions are the institutions of their class, of the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. Just like in the Aeon, in the Paradise universe, the institutions are the institutions of the class that the Aeon company is a part of, the big monopoly capitalist class. This is, the essence of the modern state. And every time there's a new scientific development that can advance its exploitation and its process of capital accumulation, as Marx and Engels write in the German ideology, whenever through the development of industry and commerce new forms of intercourse have evolved, the law has always been compelled to admit them amongst the most modes of acquiring property. That's all the Paradise universe does. It allows, this new development for exploiting, for benefiting the rich, to have its proper place within bourgeois justice, within bourgeois legality. So, what Paradise does, as I mentioned in this article, is put a mirror up to our societies. It shows us through the medium of a technology we don't currently have, so that we can disconnect, our stereotypes and watching it, the barbarity operative in the logic of capital accumulation and the capitalist mode of life. It also shows us that we can fight back. I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to spoil the movie, but there's always resistance. The world that we live in is not eternal. It was not placed here by a God. It's not fucking human nature. as the people on the right want you to think. It is the development of human societies throughout history, specifically class societies. It came out of a certain series of contradictions within the feudal mode of life. It is pregnant itself with a different set of contradictions. And just like it came into existence, it will come out of existence and give way to a new mode of life. And if we study systematically and comprehensively the mode of life that we currently live in, we see that there is no which way possible for it to turn unless there's the common ruin of all of the contending classes and something akin to Rome, the complete implosion and destruction of that civilization at large, that mode of life. There's no other way for it to go other than socialism. We have the capacity to get rid ourselves of this dystopian barbarity that we live in. But it's something that we can do only if we come together and fight as a class, also in unity with, the classes that are the friends of this universal emancipatory working class. If we come together and fight for the political power of our class, we can change this world. It's not eternal. We can do it. People have done it. All we have to do is look at China, look at Cuba, Vietnam, Laos, the DPRK. These countries have done it. They've engaged in the process of transforming that. There's still a long way to go. They're trying to carry forth these transformations in a world that's still dominated by capitalist imperialism, but it's a society qualitatively different from anything any of us who have grown up in the US or in the West have experienced. So that's Paradise. Make sure to check it out. It's one hell of a fucking movie. It's amongst the best movies that I've seen. Oh, I